Jaime watched from the foot of the table, thinking of all those lords who had aspired to a seat on the king's small council. They can bloody well have mine. If this was power, why did it taste like tedium? The thoughts of Jaime Lannister on the small council. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 72, Jaime 9. King Jaehaerys I Targaryen returned alone to King's Landing as his regency ended, and he took the rule of Westeros into his own hands. Soaring above the city upon his dragon, Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, 5 knights of the Kingsguard had preceded him, arriving 3 days prior to ensure all was prepared for his arrival. Queen Alysanne did not accompany her husband. In light of the uncertainty surrounding their marriage and the strained relations between the king and his mother, Queen Alyssa, and the small council, it had been judged wiser for her to remain on Dragonstone with her companions and the rest of the Kingsguard in the event there was any attempt at foul play by the Queen Regent and the Hand of the King. The day itself was far from favourable. As Grand Maester Benifer records, the skies were grey and a steady drizzle had fallen through much of the morning. Benifer and the councillors gathered in the inner yard of the Red Keep, cloaked and hooded against the damp, awaiting their king. Around them, life in the castle continued as ever. Knights and squires, stable boys, washerwomen, and countless others going about their duties, though many paused from time to time to cast an anxious glance skyward. At last, the beating of great leathern wings was heard, and a watchman upon the eastern walls glimpsed the distant gleam of Vermithor's bronze scales. A cheer rose then, first from the walls, then spreading outward, swelling as it passed over the Red Keep, down to Aegon's high hill, through the streets of the city, and far beyond into the surrounding countryside. The king had returned. Jaehaerys did not descend at once. Instead, he circled the city 3 times, each pass lower than the last, allowing every man, boy, and barefoot girl in King's Landing a chance to see him, to cheer him, to marvel. Only after these passes did he guide Vermithor down into the yard before Maegor's Holdfast, where the lords assembled. He had changed since I last saw him, Grand Maester Benifer writes in his detailed records of the events that day. The boy who had flown to Dragonstone was gone, and in his place stood a man grown. He had gained several inches in height as well, his frame broader through chest and arm. His hair fell loose around his shoulders, and a soft golden beard now marked his chin and cheeks. He wore no royal finery, only salt-stained leather, suited for riding or the hunt, with a studded jerkin for protection. Yet, at his hip, hung Blackfire, the sword of his grandsire, Aegon the Conqueror, the blade of kings. Even in its sheath it was unmistakable. At the sight of that sword, Benifer confessed a chill passed through him. As the dragon settled, smoke curling from his jaws, he found himself uneasy. Once he had fled to Pentos in fear of what might follow Maegor the Cruel's death. Now, standing in the damp yard beneath the looming walls of the Red Keep, he wondered if returning had indeed been a mistake. The young king, no longer a boy, soon dispelled his Grand Maester's unease. As he slipped down from Vermithor's back, he smiled, and as Lord Tully later said, it was though the sun had broken through the clouds. The gathered lords bowed deeply, some dropping to their knees, while across the city bells began to ring in celebration. Jaehaerys removed his gloves, tucking them into his belt, and addressed them simply. "My lords, we have work to do." One very notable absence marked the moment. His mother, the Dowager Queen Alyssa, was not there to greet him. She had secluded herself to Maegor's Holdfast, and it fell to Jaehaerys to seek her out. Some saw this as a petty slight on the part of Alyssa, one last act of defiance while she still held power. What passed between them when they met again after their earlier estrangement is not recorded, so we can only speculate on what transpired behind those closed doors. But what we do know is the Queen later emerged upon her son's arm, her face red and swollen from weeping. Though no longer regent, she attended the welcoming feast held that evening, and appeared at court in the days that followed. Yet, she no longer sat in the small council and took no part in the ruling of the realm or any politics for that matter, not even in an advisory manner. As Grand Maester Benifer observed, she continued to fulfill her duties to her son and to the realm, but whatever joy she had once known was gone. But again, some have argued that this had been the case since the day King Aenys had died. The young king began his reign by reshaping the small council, retaining certain men while dismissing others who had proven unequal to their duties. He confirmed his mother's choice of his uncle, Lord Daemon Velaryon, as Hand of the King, and kept Lord Corbray as the commander of the City Watch, given his show of loyalty during Rogar Baratheon's final days as Hand of the King. Lord Tully was thanked for his service, reunited with his wife Lady Lucinda, and sent back to Riverrun. In his place, as Master of Laws, Jaehaerys appointed Albyn Massey, Lord of Stonedance, one of the first to declare for him on Dragonstone. Albyn Massey had only recently left the Citadel, where he had been in the progress of forging a maester's chain, before the sudden deaths of his father and brothers, which brought him home to rule. Though afflicted with a twisted spine that left him with a limp, he was known to say, "I do not limp when I read, nor when I write." Most across the realm believed he was a wise choice for the role of Master of Law, given the complexities of it needed a man of strong intelligence and acumen. Since Aegon's conquest, the Lord of the Tides, the Lord of House Velaryon, was given the role of Master of Ships and Lord Admiral. Given Lord Daemon was the Hand of the King, someone new must need be found for the role. The king chose Manfred Redwine, Lord of the Arbor, who had come to court accompanied by his sons, Robert, Rickard and Ryan, all serving as squires. This was again a very wise pick by the king, given House Redwine are just as well known for their ability as sailors and shipbuilders as House Velaryon, who often overshadowed them. The city rejoiced at the dismissal of Edwell Celtigar as Master of Coin. The king is said to have treated him with courtesy, even praising his daughters for their loyal service to Queen Alysanne on Dragonstone, calling them two treasures. The girls remained with the queen, but Lord Celtigar himself departed at once for Claw Isle. With him, his harsh taxes on the small folk of King's Landing. Within 3 days of taking power, Jaehaerys had abolished all by royal decree. If his father beat swords and shoot horses, so be it. A knight needs his sword, a horse needs shoes, and I need bath. Jaehaerys Targaryen to Carl Corbray. Fire and Blood, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, their triumphs and tragedies. Finding a worthy successor for Lord Edwell Celtigar as Master of Coin proved no simple matter. Several councillors urged the king to name Lord Lyman Lannister, reputed to be the richest lord in all of Westeros, but a man who had publicly been currying favour with his elder sister, Rhaena, in the west. So the king remained unconvinced. Unless Lord Lyman can discover a mountain of gold beneath the Red Keep, he is said to have remarked, "I do not know that he offers the answers we need." He also briefly considered a man of House Hightower, whose wealth came from trade rather than the land. Whilst Lord Donald Hightower had acted quickly in the arrest of Boros Baratheon in Old Town, his loyalties in more troubled times gave him pause. In the end, Jaehaerys made a far bolder choice, one that would indeed be looked back on with much debate in its success. He looked beyond Westeros altogether. Rhaegar Draz was no lord or knight, not even a magister, but a merchant and a moneylender who had risen from nothing to become the richest man in Pentos. Despite his wealth, his low birth had barred him from the councils of the city, leaving him scorned by his peers. When the king summoned him, Draz accepted eagerly, bringing his family, associates, and great fortune across the narrow sea. How Jaehaerys came to know of Rhaegar Draz is not clear, and some do regard this as a matter of suspicion. To grant him equal standing with the other councillors, Jaehaerys raised him to lordship. Yet, lacking lands, castle, or sworn swords, he soon earned a clever nickname among the court, the Lord of Air. Draz himself took it in good humour. "If I could tax air," he quipped, "I would be a lord indeed." Jaehaerys also dismissed Septon Matthias, the loud and overbearing Septon, who had so fiercely condemned the king's marriage as sinful. Matthias did not accept his removal quietly. The faith will look askance at any king who thinks to rule without a septon by his side, he warned. The king answered him calmly, "We shall not lack for septons. Septon Oswick and Scepter Isabel will remain, and a young man has come from Highgarden to tend our libraries. His name is Bath." Matthias scoffed at this, calling Oswick a doddering fool and dismissing Jezebel simply for being a woman. While admitting he knew nothing of Bath, nor of many other things, Jaehaerys replied curtly. It was said afterwards, perhaps truthfully, perhaps not, that Lord Massey quipped the king required 3 people to replace Hector Matthias, if only to keep the balance even. Scepter Matthias departed for Old Town 4 days later. Too heavy to ride, he made his journey in a gilded wheelhouse, attended by guards and servants. It is said as he crossed the Mander at Bitterbridge, he passed Septon Bath, travelling the other way, alone, mounted on a humble donkey. The king's reforms did not end with his council. Jaehaerys swept aside dozens of lesser officials, replacing the Keeper of the Keys, the Chief Steward of the Red Keep, and all his subordinates, the Harbour Master of King's Landing, and those of Old Town, Maidenpool and Duskendale as well, the Warden of the King's Mint, the King's Justice, the Master at Arms, the Kennel Master, the Master of Horse, and even the Ratcatchers. No office was too small to escape his notice. He had ordered the dungeons beneath the Red Keep to be cleared and cleansed. Prisoners in the black cells were brought up to the light, bathed, and granted a chance to plead their case. Jaehaerys feared that some might have been unjustly imprisoned during his uncle's reign, and in this he was proven right. Though many of the captives had been driven mad in years of darkness, and could not be freed. Only once these matters were settled, to his satisfaction, and his new officials firmly in place, did the king instruct Grand Maester Benifer to send word to Storm's End, summoning Lord Rogar Baratheon back to King's Landing to answer for his crimes.